I'm Wayne Carey, and this is The Truth Hurts.
Well, Wayne, good to see you again. Almost didn't make it in this morning, I believe.
Been an eventful weekend, and I'll tell you what, whatever you do, don't listen to maps. Have you ever had any trouble with maps or the pin drop, or what do they call it?
Yeah, when you drop a pin for a mate or something like that.
We'll drop a pin. So I got dropped a pin on maps, and I was going to the Lexington Footy Club, which is about half an hour from Ballarat. So got up to Ballarat early. Mate dropped me the pin, whatever you call it. I put it in. I ended up in the Enfield National Park. Can you believe it?
That sounds ominous.
In the middle of nowhere, right as it's getting dark, there was mud everywhere. I thought, if I get bogged, I'm not going to get there. So I was going to arrive at about 5:45. Didn't get there until 7:15. So nearly didn't get there. And I must say, if I'd got bogged there, who knows where I would have ended up.
So you're off-road?
Had no reception, little mud tracks going everywhere through this national park.
You didn't think when you went off the sealed road that you were...
Well, I did think to myself, I thought, you know, who would have a footy ground in here? And I tell you what, you wouldn't want to be the opposition coming to play this team, because you definitely wouldn't have the win. It was, yeah. And anyway, I went too far into the forest for starters before I turned around. But I'm just glad. If I hadn't got reception, I reckon I'd be still in the forest. Some people might be happy about that. But I tell you what, I eventually got there, and they were a great footy club. So I had a really good night, successful night. So everyone had fun in the end, but didn't finish up until late because I got there so late.
Well, sounds like a good night still that you had. A big night too for one of my mates on the weekend, Wayne. His name's Darren, bit of a character down in Tassie. You like me to say that. He kicked 100 goals in a season, actually. You always telling blokes about that. But he, a milestone in his life on the weekend I wanted to ask you about. He proposed to his partner. It was a 30th birthday party, so they had all their friends there. He was giving his speech. And then he dropped in at the end. He dropped down to one knee and said, "Lauren, will you marry me?" Now, I'm not one.
That's very romantic.
Yeah, I'm not one for this sort of public sort of romance. Oh, it's a bit harsh. Anything in public.
You don't look like the romantic type. Sorry, mate.
That's probably fair. Interesting to do it in public, though. How did you propose? How many times have you?
Well, how many times have I? I've only been married once, by the way. And Sally, I'll never forget it. Akita restaurant, Japanese restaurant, in North Melbourne. Had it all planned out. Had it planned that make sure that back room was basically empty when I did it. Got there and then didn't have the courage to go through with it. So,
what? Too nervous?
So got right through the.
So where was the ring at this stage? What was it?
It was in my pocket. But I chickened out, and then when I got home, I did it at home. So I completely chickened out at the restaurant.
Did she know something was up afterwards, or?
Sally's probably thinking, or probably thinks now, I wish you'd chickened out altogether, but no, we still laugh about it today, about me being a big chicken. But why bringing up all these romantic sort of stories, by the way?
Oh, I'm just, I'd like to see your softer side and see whether you've got that to your game.
Well, I'm a little bit of a romantic. I like rom-coms.
Yeah.
I like watching rom-coms.
You have said that to me. Yeah.
I like sitting up watching.
Which ones in particular?
I like everything. I like all the rom-coms. Tear up as well, Ant.
Deary me. Wouldn't have been tearing up at the football over the weekend, although North Melbourne were pretty poor, but we're not going to talk about the Roos. It's just too hard to talk about for you. The big one, the big talking point of the weekend was Buddy, the Sydney Collingwood game. I wasn't expecting the reaction that we've had since then. So he was booed by the Collingwood supporters, mainly in the last quarter once the game was over. And John Longmire put it on the agenda as an issue post-game.
Oh, they would. Why would they boo him? Why would you boo him? Probably celebrate a 36-year-old, wouldn't you, that's been a champion of the game? Why would you... It's been 10 years since we played Collingwood here. Why would you boo one of the champions of the game? Doesn't make sense to me.
So since then, there's been more commentary about it. Nathan Buckley's added to it, saying, at worst, it's ignorance and bigotry. What's your reaction?
I think the commentary. I think Horse has obviously highlighted it, and I get it. And coaches are so protective of the players, so I understand why. But I think now highlighting it just makes it a bigger issue. And Bucks, I'm not sure what Bucks is talking about, because every time I played against Collingwood, I got booed for 10 years, and I think it's a badge of honour. I mean, like you said, it was more in the last quarter when the game was over, so Collingwood know they're going to win. He is a champion of the game, and the reason why Collingwood supporters are is because he has been a champion of the game. He is a superstar. And should you do it, you know, look, I'm not a booer. I'm not into booing. I don't understand why people do boo, but they have the right. They pay the money. They come in. They want to. I just think that the overreaction is the commentary now around it. Like I said, I was booed. In actual fact, the Collingwood supporters used to cheer Carey's a wanker. Now, they're probably right, but but I got that every time you played against Collingwood. So you always knew that you were going to be booed and called names when you played against Collingwood. Richmond supporters would boo as well. The bigger clubs, big supporter bases, and if anything, it spurs you on. I remember being booed when I was playing, and I, like I said, I took it as a badge of honour, and it made me want to win even more if that was possible. The
sensitivity around this, I think, comes from what happened to Adam Goodes towards the end of his career.
Yeah.
Obviously, a proud Indigenous,
and that's completely
That felt like it had an edge to it. The Adam Goodes stuff, to me, anyway. This is I think that had a real edge to the booing of Adam Goodes in the end. This, to me, just felt like it was a group of supporters who were winning and they just wanted to boo someone. It felt different. I don't know if that felt different.
Oh, look, but no doubt. I mean, Buddy hasn't been. It's not a continuous thing on the week. Like I think the fact that, let's not forget, Sydney knocked them out of a preliminary final last year, and all of a sudden now they're on top late in the quarter, champion of the game, and Buddy plays. But he plays the game in a fashion, you know, he's a physical type player. So I have no doubt. Saw a couple of incidents where he went in and went in pretty hard. And, you know, I don't think there's anything to it. I don't know why people are talking about it, that it's some sort of issue like what the superstars of the game are not allowed to be booed, which brings me to a little bit of commentary again around Nick Dacos. Around how the Sydney Swans handled him, and, you know, they gave him a little bit of a niggle. Come on. What? It wasn't exact. I mean, let's be honest.
Not really comparable to the 80s or 90s.
No, and nor should it be, but it wasn't exactly, it wasn't overly intimidating, I wouldn't have thought. I tell you what, he handled it very well. Didn't have the influence that he has had over the last 4 or 5 weeks, but still made a contribution. And the fact that they're putting so much time into him, it freed one of his teammates up. A few of his teammates got a little bit more space at certain stoppages because he came up. So it was an advantage in the end for Collingwood. But in terms of everyone thinking that the intimidation and that went a little bit too far, I mean, that's rhubarb.
I tend to agree with you there. Damien Hardwick has been in the news in the past week. Richmond not going as he would have liked. Of course, they won the game against West Coast on the weekend. It was leading into the game. He made some comments about say it to my face in terms of his future. He's also got locked in this blue over Tim Taranto. What have you made of Damien Hardwick and his sort of media persona recently?
It was very combative, wasn't it, when he said, you know, say it to my face, like he was going to, you know, if someone did, like there was going to be some sort of physical altercation. That, you know, say it to my face. He's had an interesting a couple of years for mine, Dimma. We know that he's a 3-time premiership coach, and, you know, he was right on the verge of being sacked, and then he's become, and when that was going on, as you can imagine, he was a very humble, I thought the way he handled himself right through that turmoil, if you want to call it, right before they re-signed him, before he's won these 3 flags. I was a massive Dimma fan. You win 3 flags, and I'm sorry, but I've seen the change in him. Just the comments and...
How do you mean?
Well, I just think he can be a bit of a smart aleck towards reporters that ask him certain questions. He obviously talked about how much, you know, they hated Marvel Stadium. He just made some weird comments, and I think that comes off the back of winning 3 flags. There's no doubt about that. I put my hand up and say that, you know, in the prime of my footy career, I probably thought I was better than what I was and got carried away with myself. And I reckon Dimma has had a period where he's got a little bit carried away with himself in terms of the way he's handled the media.
That's interesting.
Alistair Clarkson's done the same thing.
Because we want to hear what these coaches and players think.
What is amazing is it's the guys that have had success that end up like that. Mick Malthouse will admit that, and let's be honest, Mick might have been harsh on the media right from the word go, but certainly, you know, winning flags. That, you know, he reporters went into press conferences scared of
I remember my first
Mick
media
Malthouse.
conference with Mick. It was in the boardroom at Collingwood. I would have been 21, pretty early days in the media, and you ask a question of Mick, and he hadn't seen you. He hadn't seen you around before, and he challenges you.
Yep.
But once you answer back, and he can tell that you know
what you're talking
about, then he would move on, and
that's the biggest thing with the coaches. They don't want to be asked silly questions. They want questions that actually make sense and I guess reflect how the game was played or how a particular player played. And sometimes they don't get those questions exactly right. But I just feel, and by the way, I love Mick Malthouse and I love the way he goes. He's very entertaining. I think he does a great job in the media now. But yeah, Dimma, you can just see now though, it's just, he's just tapering off. He's a little bit more humble this year because obviously the Tigers are not where people thought they would be. I love the fact, by the way, that he defends his players. There's not question. It's the manner in which
say
he
it to my
defends
face
Say it to my face. And by the way, I played against Dimma. Come on, Dimma, not even that tough. I mean,
he was part of the toughest backline in the comp, mate.
Say it to my face.
You didn't like that Essendon backline.
Dimma couldn't squash a grape with a long-handed shovel, Dimma. Hey? Come on.
Oh, he had Dean Wallace backing him
Anyway,
up.
I reckon, I know, and it was directed at Cornsey, and I reckon Cornsey would probably take Dimma anyway.
Give you seen.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, Cornsey's got to run around in the shower to get wet. He's that scrawny.
We've got some other coaches under the microscope. Carlton has been a big talking point for a few weeks now, and we have spoken about the Blues. There's been a lot of discussion about their method. We know they've got a level of talent. We're talking about now their method and the way they've been moving the ball. I think people have been tiptoeing around this as an issue because of who their coach is, a champion of the game in Michael Voss. Are we sure Michael Voss can coach? That's the question I've got for you. I know it's a provocative question.
I still think it is a question mark. I don't think anyone that talks about footy would have that question. Is he going to be a great coach? Is he already a good coach? Was he a good coach before he left Brisbane? He obviously then gone to Port Adelaide, done a massive apprenticeship under Ken Hinkley. They just missed the finals, obviously, last year. We all believe that they've got the list to play finals footy, and everyone had, this is the year. I don't know whether you've looked at their next 4 or 5 games.
Yeah, it's tough.
Oh, it's as tough as 4 or 5 weeks out of any team. So we're going to find out very, very quickly whether the Blues. I think you can almost put a line through the Blues now. I don't think they'll play finals footy this year. If you look at their draw.
So the next 4, Western Bulldogs. We've got this weekend. Well, not we. On Saturday night, they've got Collingwood. Then they have, who have they got following? They've got Sydney in Sydney, and then they've got Melbourne.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's as tough as it gets.
The question I've got for you is, because they flirted with Ross Lyon, and you see what Ross is doing with St Kilda. They've got huge number of injuries this year. They're only starting to get some guys back. You'd say from the outside that Carlton has a superior list than St Kilda?
No doubt about that. I think anyone that analyses lists, you would look both lists and said Carlton way ahead of St Kilda, and you look at the results that both teams.
So do you think the results would be different if Ross Lyon was coaching Carlton?
Yes, I do. I rate Ross Lyon as high as I do any of the coaches in the competition. He's been up in grand finals in time on. Okay, he hasn't got the ultimate prize, but he's a super coach and he gets a reaction straight away. And we've seen that with all the sides that he coaches, and it's about effort. I'm not saying that Carlton they're doing a lot of things right, but boy, I mean, and let's really nail this down. I reckon about every scribe in the country said Carlton will play finals this year. Not too many thought that they would miss, and they're going to miss. So there are massive question marks around this football club, and unfortunately, a champion of the game, and Michael Voss, who I absolutely love and loved as a player, one of the greatest captains I think the game has ever seen. But unfortunately, this next 4 or 5 weeks is going to tell us a lot about Michael Voss and also about the Carlton Footy Club.
They are going to continue to be a big talking point. Another one. It was on your agenda. You've put this on the agenda. This one involving
well Tasmania, and didn't we get that right? I mean, I stuck up for Tassie. A few people were saying, they shouldn't. I like I said, I love the produce.
I appreciate that.
By the way, I'm going to be in Tassie in a few weeks. I'm going down there for my birthday. I'm just going down there for a little bit
What, like a getaway or
no, well, a little bit of both. A little bit of a getaway, a little bit of work. And I'll be definitely tucking into a lot of their produce down there because, as I said, it's a great spot. But what I'm bemused about is the fact that everyone's talking about now who's going to be the coach. I mean, how many years away is it? 4.
5 to them in the comp, but they'll probably try and get
4.
a coach earlier than that.
Yeah, they'll get a coach earlier than that. So, and everyone's saying the perfect fit is Nathan Buckley. And once again, Bucks, ripping guy. I think he's doing a great job in the media, by the way. Really good job. I think he articulates himself as well as anyone. But let's be honest. Look what Collingwood's doing now that Bucks isn't there. All of a sudden, Bucks is the best option to coach Tasmania when I don't think he really did all that well with Collingwood. I know
so
in one
grand final, obviously.
I know in 1 year.
Yep.
They had one great year under Bucks, and then you would say that there've been a lot of other years that he coached that weren't up to where they thought they should be. And I think McRae's now showing the whole footy world that if you...
Well, very different styles, don't they? Both in the way they deal with their players, but also with their game plans as well.
So one's winning a lot and the other one was losing a lot. So what if you do that, then what? Step out of the game for 4 or 5 years and then what? Sign you up for Tassie. I mean, that'd be a massive backward step, I would have thought, for Tassie. Tassie's got to get a coach and might be someone that has already coached, but I'm not sure Nathan Buckley's the right option given what he did at Collingwood.
Big call. Some interesting scenes in the Gold Coast game on the weekend pre-game. Maddie Rowell, I saw some vision.
I reckon blokes just do this.
You reckon he's like that, you reckon?
He was eating grass. What is he, a horse?
He was rubbing his hands together, grabbing a bit of grass, sniffing it, and then he ate a bit. It's obviously part of his ritual. I'd love to hear him explain it.
I haven't seen him eat grass before. I know that he collects footies and he's
a bit different like that.
Yeah, he's a little bit different.
Did you have any superstitions at all?
He's a student of the game. No, not really. I used to listen. Listen to the same song. You know, Billy Joel, Uptown Girl.
What? You've been serious?
Eye of the Tiger. No, I'd mix it up. But
what were you shadowboxing in the rooms?
Like I said, sometimes a bit of softer music and sometimes a little bit of.
What was the theory behind that?
Music. No theory, but I remember Nick Rewalt. He used to come out and run around the ground, and he'd run about 4Ks before the game started. I reckon that was all about look at me, and I reckon Rowley might be eating the grass just to get a little bit of camera time. Well, why else would you eat grass before and sit there and, you know, yeah.
I'm sure he'll be asked to explain it in the coming weeks.
It's called wanting some attention. That's what it's called.
Well, speaking of attention, now I didn't want this in the rundown. This topic. You've bashed a few people already today. You said no, this has to be in the rundown, and we're talking umpires now. Now, what?
Well, no, I did not say it had to be in the rundown. We don't have a rundown. We're just off the cuff. But I will say congratulations to Simon Meredith.
Congratulations now. Jeez,
Simon Meredith, 450
games. It's a huge effort. No, fantastic.
That's an unbelievable effort. You're given how much the umpires run.
Absolutely.
They run as much as any player does on any given. I know that it's a little bit less now that there's 4 umpires on the ground, but that's an almighty effort. And the only person that's come close to him is Boomer Harvey. And let's be honest, they both play a very similar game. Well, neither of them.
I know where you're going. Explain it.
Okay, to get well over 400 games, you can't be playing a.
Are you saying bruise free? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm saying. Yeah, well, an umpire's not getting knocked around.
No, I know that.
And Boomer never got knocked around, and that's why he played over 400 and how many? 20 odd games.
What would Boomer think of that comment?
I think it's. Let's be honest. Boomer didn't play like Glenn Archer, did he?
No.
Even though Archer still played over 300 games, but he wasn't a Glenn Archer or a Paddy Dangerfield or a Joel Selwood style player. And they all played 300, 350 games. So there's still almighty efforts from those guys to play that amount of footy, playing like they do, is an unbelievable effort. I never thought any of those players would get even close to that. And Paddy Dangerfield's, he's obviously still going and still playing great footy.
Another one too, Scotty Pendlebury. Question without notice: Can he get there? I mean, I haven't actually checked what he's closing in on 400.
Yeah, and he's in unbelievable form. He's playing great footy. In the best again yesterday. Yes, he can. But Pendles, not that Pendles is inside outside, but gets caught very rarely in traffic is unbelievable. One of the best players I've ever seen in traffic is Scott Pendlebury. He makes everything slow down around him. I think the only one in the modern game that's similar is Bontempelli.
Yep.
But he's a freak. He's a freak, and I think the way McRae's using him is perfect for him and his age. But the way he's playing, he'd play for another 3 or 4 years.
He's having a great season, absolutely. Yeah. By the way, we wish Brent Harvey all the best in his recovery from that.
Yes, he had a horrific leg break, wasn't it? Yeah. So no, he'll be doing everything right. He loves his diet and his weights and all of that, and a little bit of tongue in cheek, Boomer.
Of course,
he wasn't inside. He was more outside.
Now, there's one thing that I wanted to bring up with you that has really affected me over the weekend. I'm pretty pissed off, to be honest. Captain Morgan, as you know, I'm a rum man, rum and Coke. Captain Morgan is my staple beverage at home because of the cans, nice and easy, high sugar content. Probably shouldn't have too many of them, but I do. I went into the bottle shop on the weekend and I noticed the Captain Morgan cans were looking a little bit different. They just changed a bit of the pictures on the front of them, and I thought, oh, okay, this is interesting. What's going on here? Now, I picked the can up, and it felt different in my hand. And I looked down and I said, "This."
You just buy individual cans. Don't get a 6-pack or anything like that. You're unbelievable.
No, I generally buy the 10s, but this is a 4-pack. So the 10s are still using the old cans. Anyway, that's another story. But I looked down at this can, and they've reduced the can size from 375 mils to 330 mils, and they're the same price. They're the same price, and so you are losing for every 4 cans. You're losing about half a can.
You're living some sort of life if that sort of stuff's affecting you.
Half a can for 4 cans. Every 10 cans, you're losing a can.
I've got to take you out a couple of nights. Take you out for dinner or do something. If something is trivial,
I'm paying the same money for these cans. I expect the 375 is what I want.
I tell you what, being conned. If you want to know, I've been conned, and this is one of the biggest cons. Actually, I'm not sure of all time, but certainly in my life, I invested in this company called Firepower. Russell Crowe, Steve Waugh, Mark Rasciuto. We had some massive names that were behind this and invested in this.
Yeah,
they sponsored the South Sydney Rabbitohs. I think it might have been the Sydney Kings. I think they might have sponsored at one point in time.
So what was Firepower?
Well, it was I can't believe that it actually did this, but it was a pill that you put into your tank, and it cleaned your tank and made you can't go further just putting this pill in. Anyway, we all got sucked in, and that ended up being a massive con. Hundreds of millions people.
Yeah. So obviously very serious for a number of people that would have...
Exactly right. A lot of people. But that's where I've been conned. That's the biggest con that I've...
So how did that all unfold? So you obviously... You got involved through someone. Was it Mark Rasciuto or someone like that?
Yeah, got involved early days. I'm not sure. Through a mutual friend.
And then you obviously expect a return on your investment over time.
Of course. And then you introduce other people, and then they buy in, and it just becomes. And then you feel bad because obviously it went belly up. At one point, I could have sold out for a lot of money, but I didn't.
So it went bust. Eventually.
Went bust. Yeah, I didn't sell out. I didn't sell out for a lot because I knew at that time that it was not a real thing. And I thought if I sell to someone else and then they're holding the can, so to speak, the heavier can, not your little light one, then how bad would you feel? So I held on to them. Plus, I got in right at the bottom, so it wasn't like it was an astronomical amount of money or that I invested in it. But that was the biggest con, and the fact that the people that they had in it, I think that makes it. I think that's what makes it more believable. And I think that's why these Ponzi schemes and stuff that people get involved in it, they just look at names that are in it and they go, oh, if he's in it, they would have done the research.
It's a big selling point. Absolutely.
It must be a good thing. But no, it wasn't, went under. So I would have thought that's a little bit bigger than your Captain Morgan cans.
It might be a first world problem that I'm dealing with at the moment. But still a problem nonetheless. Thanks again for your time, Wayne. Another big week of talking points.
We've got some big guests coming up too.
Oh.
Some big guests.
Oh, you've been on the phone, have you?
I've been on the phone. So we've got some big guests coming up in episodes not too far away.
I'll look forward to that.